happened.
Okay.
Seriously.
But
Oh, well.
how do people find the open link?
Oh, well, I put it in the YouTube chat.
Yeah, I mean, people are bored.
Yeah.
Otherwise, no one could find the open link.
How do people find the open link?
No, whoops, that's I put it in the YouTube chat.
Oh my gosh.
People are bored.
Okay, there we go. I've switched off my thing on this one. Okay, well, we're back up on YouTube now. We'll have to have a little think about how we're going to manage that. Before that happened, I actually thought there was quite nice discussions going on in the different rooms. Though Suds, you seem to be just on the introduction stage.
Yeah.
when
Maybe I didn't do it in the best way.
Filled it full of pornography. And we have lost Totti as well. But what we'll do is we'll just go through. I'll start with Fran. What went on in your room? The appropriate things that went on in your room.
Yeah, actually, my group worked pretty well. So no, we were just talking about pretty much basic things that we should talk about, the basic tasks that we do in our daily work in our club, like how we just take data into practice, and also how to communicate that data to coaches, and how it is possible to see that the things that we propose to them to have an effect on the pitch, and to pretty much convince them to take the advice that we give to them. And also about how to, they just asked the question on how would it be possible to get data from junior teams when you don't have a data provider that gives it to you, like the options that are available for you to create your own data pretty much.
Yeah, that's a good question. I was thinking a bit about that, how we might be able to give some sort of basic tips, because I train a junior team as well, and you can do basic things with passing networks and expected goals even with very junior teams and with your amateur team, and look at that. But I think all of those questions are very good. They seem to be mostly about sort of communicating with the training staff rather than the analytics themselves.
Just the practical things that we do, and the basic thing is to see those things in practice, real in the football pitch. So that's pretty much that. And also they had the question if we have ever faced the problem of having to use tracking data extracted just from GPS vests and not from cameras. I mean, we haven't had that problem in our club, but I don't know if some of you have to deal with that. Like just having your own players and not the ball and not the opponents.
Yeah, that's a big problem, isn't it? I know another club that's got that problem. It's very difficult to analyze football that way. Yeah, Pascal says we've lost Virginia. I don't know her. I don't know her address. Otherwise, Xavier has to contact her and give her the link if we can, because I don't have her WhatsApp. Okay, Pascal, what did we learn in your room then?
Actually, we had an endless introduction round.
Okay.
So we started with 7 people, and then we thought it was a good idea that everybody gives a brief introduction about himself, and then all the time people join. And we never ended with that until people we did not want to have in the chats came.
Okay.
And if Virginia is listening, I'm gonna send the link to her LinkedIn profile because I have her contact there.
Don't put it openly on her LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, you can put it in the chat.
Please, just
no, only as a private message. Yeah, of course.
But can you give me some idea who the guys were who came into the chat, actually? Because I wasn't quite sure.
We had one guy from Sports Logic working in hockey analytics, so it was quite cool, but unfortunately there was no real discussion. And we got Corey Pace, who wrote that lovely blog article about our session last week. Then we had a guy from Denmark who started talking about some interesting things that Danish clubs are right now starting with the hiring of data scientists, because this is somehow owned by the Danish Federation, and we had one guy working as a sports scientist for the Portuguese FA.
Okay.
So it was a cool group.
A lot of the people listening are more qualified than we are.
Yeah.
That's very nice to hear. Well, we'll have to get some of these people on to give talks about what they do and so on. So that's really good. Okay, we'll go over to Laurie if I put you on.
Yeah. So we mostly had sort of questions relating to the sort of what's actually in tracking data and how you get started working with it. So we had a little bit of discussion about, like, there's different providers of tracking data, and they actually produce different things. I was thinking a little bit about the sort of how you start to work with the data. And, one of the issues, and it's an issue that people raise quite a lot, is, one of the barriers to entry is simply just, it all comes in different formats. There's, the first thing you have to do is sort of figure out how to read it in, and how to do simple things like visualize it. And so I wonder whether, as code, as data becomes available and as people start to produce repositories, whether, that sort of little initial learning curve will become a lot less steep for people to work on it. We had an interesting question on how to combine tracking and event data. And obviously this is something that, I'm sure all of you do very regularly in your research. And, of course, one of the issues that I found is that when you have event data from one provider and tracking data from another provider, it's quite hard to synchronize the two. So if you want to sort of search through the event data and find all the shots and then go into the tracking data and identify exactly where all the players were at those instants, you have to do quite a lot of extra work to sort of figure out exactly when the shot took place in the tracking data. Often there's a sort of 2 to 3 second time difference in the timestamps. And so we had a sort of short chat about that before the breakout sessions ended.
Yeah, cool. And Suds?
Great. Just welcome to Virginia. She's back on the call.
All right, good.
Yeah, I made the same naive mistake as Pascal, trying to do introductions, thinking that it would only be 6 people in the breakout room before a lot of people joined. But I think maybe what I can share is that I had a fairly diverse group of people that introduced themselves so far. Pia Salmon was a soccer scout and a coach. Another person had or did his master's in data science, but then is working at another job as life took him in a different direction. And some people working in business intelligence and in data in general, but not necessarily in data science. And perhaps maybe the thought that came to my mind when it comes to trying to produce content, especially around the Academy channel, would be maybe breaking it down into 4 different sections. Things that I'm consistently hearing all the time is, okay, yeah, how do we get the data? How do we read it in? Should we store it in a tabular format? Should we store it maybe in a non-relational way? What are the benefits of these different methods? Data visualization, what are the different ways that you can visualize data, either through R, Python, or even a business intelligence tool, or maybe even using D3 or high charts. Statistical analysis and machine learning. So I know, David, I think you have one lecture coming up around Poisson distribution, expected goals. And if we could maybe then create different content around how we use different statistical techniques to answer different sort of questions, that could be really good. And then the last part, which I consistently hear from Fran, is the communication piece. So it's all well and done of what you do with the data, and then how do you communicate it? So unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to actually hear people's questions because I did the introductions, but it seemed like those are the 4 buckets to try to produce content under.
Cool. No, that's really good. Good. That's well, it's a nice summary. At least it's very interesting to hear that high level of involvement by the types of people who are already looking at this. I mean, it seems Pascal's group was full of experts in, in a way. I don't know. I just randomly assigned into the groups. But I think we're going to be trying to cover a lot of that from we've all got sort of different types of expertise here. And I think we're going to cover as much as we can of all of the things that have come up today. Suds is continuing, you're sort of doing an R track and I'm doing a Python track. The idea is we were thinking next week, or I've been talking to Laurie about next week doing an introduction for tracking data things. And then we'll also have the release of the signality data around about that time. And I think Fran is going to introduce how we've been working with the signality data. So maybe I'll just say, maybe you could each from this give a couple of words reflection about what you will personally be doing and trying to do in some of the future broadcasts. Well, we start with you, Laurie.
Sure. So as you said, next week I'm going to just kind of go through some of the basics for working with tracking data in Python. So hopefully I'll have a little bit of data to share as well. And the goal for that really is just to kind of step through some code for first of all, to look at what's actually in the data, the format that it's in, go through the code for reading it in, producing some basic plots and doing some basic small bits of analysis with it, and just kind of trying to provide the foundations for that you would always use to go on and do some kind of more focused analysis. And then in the future, beyond that, my plan was to think about how would you build a simple pitch control model based on the tracking data, and sort of step through the code that you might write to do that based on what people have published on that in the past. So those are that's hopefully what I'll achieve.
Cool. And that ties into what you were thinking of doing next, Fran, after that.
After doing all of these basic things with the data of loading it up and creating basic visualizations, I can just show how you can use that tracking data and those visualizations that you create as a pedagogical tool to show to the players and make them analyze their matches using data, and not only their feelings about what they did and the real videos of the match, but also like data-driven discussions.
Cool. And Pascal?
Yeah, I thought about talking a bit about what we mean when we talk about positional and event data, and maybe a bit about the acquisition process, because I think this is a quite interesting thing, how cameras are installed in the stadiums. I got some pictures and videos from things installed in German Bundesliga stadiums, and that event data acquisition process with all its steps of quality management afterwards is kind of crazy and maybe interesting to hear. And the other thing I'm thinking about is kind of an overview of the topics we have. I mean, we could do tactical analysis for the coaches, match analysts. We could do workload things. We are doing process automatization things, which is nothing sophisticated, but we also have projects, or a data scientist in soccer could do projects for new insight creation or so. And I could give a broad overview about what the potential areas are and where, for example, we focus on.
Cool, that sounds good. And Suds, are you going to continue with your R extravaganza?
I believe so. So I think the first thing I'll do is I have it planned to open up our GitHub, our Friends of Tracking GitHub. So make sure that we put in the code that we've already shared in the videos so that you have access to it. I think the natural next step will just be to do a part 2 of the StatsBomb data, to create a Shiny application so that you can get started with creating your own interactivity with playing with your own data. And then I think after that, maybe I'll work on again with R, but use passing heat maps and you can use different techniques to be able to measure differences between players. Even try to do some role discovery through that as well.
Oh, that's great. Okay, well, I'm just going to say thanks to you guys for participating, and thanks for all of you, apart from one of you who came into the Zoom meeting today. It was really interesting to see a few faces and hear a few voices. I just hopped between the different rooms, and we're going to continue during the week to provide different content. And I think we've booked in, it's a little bit poorly organized, but I think we've booked in Thursday this time. Laurie will give a live lecture on introducing the use of tracking data. And during the meantime, we'll upload other videos during the week. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week. Great. Bye-bye.